Okay, I'm recording the second video showing how this telescope works. What I'm doing is, I'm just going to come over here and briefly show you the Twilight Nano mount with it disassembled. See the little knob there? And that's a little plate. See, you just undo the knob at the top a little bit, just loosen it, and then there's a thing that allows you to take, like that little vice grip thing that allows you to take the tube right off there. And that's the handle that I showed before. And by the way, the weight of the entire telescope that I just showed you is approximately 11.5 pounds with a lightweight eyepiece in it, something like that. These are my flowers, by the way. These are petunias. They look pretty good right now. And between videos, I switched the telescope tube right over to this mounting right here. Sorry, I was disoriented in the video. I'll just give you a quick look at this again without tilting it all over the place. There's the thing again. I shouldn't have had that vertically. Sorry about that. But you notice the tripod collapses very easily. There's no clamp in the center. The legs just fold up, which is very convenient. It also comes with an eyepiece tray, which I probably won't use. I'll probably use the Beta turret eyepiece holder by taking this little device right out there to give me a bit more focus at the back. And then I'm thinking I've got a Beta turret eyepiece holder, and I'm thinking of putting the eyepieces in that. So anyway, everything is just the same as it was, except that it's tilted over a little bit. You can see the focusing knobs are a bit tilted, because right now what I did is I showed you how I can mount that on that little camera tripod. And this is a tripod right here. It's not even fully extended. I should have actually extended the legs out a bit further, but for my purposes this will be sturdy enough. You can see that it's up a little bit right there, and the legs will actually spread apart a little bit further than that to make it even sturdier on the ground. But for my purposes now, this should be okay. What you do is when you want to lower up and down the telescope, you just loosen that a little bit, and then push the tube down a little bit and clamp that at the same time, and then you reclamp that. It'll lock it in altitude. And this thing is for tilting the plate. I usually leave that up tight. You don't need to do that. That tilts this up and down this way, like that. You don't need that for anything but a camera when you're wanting to take like still photos and you want to reorient the thing a little bit. Now on this, there's a little device right here, if I can get it. You just loosen that, and you can slide the telescope in azimuth back and forth this way, sideways. And then you clamp that if you want to. And this is a clamp that allows you to raise and lower the tripod on the central column, which you really don't need if you're using the telescope by looking at it on that little chair, that little stool, because you don't need the eyepiece too high for doing that. Oh, you could extend the tripod up quite a bit higher by doing that if you want to. But this thing, when I'm actually observing like something like this, quite often it's good to have that clamped when you're carrying the telescope around, because the telescope will swivel sideways all over the place when you're trying to carry it. So I usually clamp that fairly tight when I'm moving it around, but when you're actually using it, you can actually kind of leave that loose, and then the telescope can swivel around a little bit in azimuth. It depends on how you want to do it and stuff like that, I guess. But anyway, the lens cap is off. Right now it's aimed at that tree. I'm going to see if I can give you a close-up look at the tree again. Well, I'll try and hold it. I got it focused fairly well. Hold on, I'll just kind of get this thing right up a little better this time. The thing should adjust itself, and you can see the tree there. I'll just get it in just the right spot. There we go. That's the neighbor's tree right there. You can see working there. Yeah, that's just the top of my neighbor's tree. It's about maybe 200 yards away, maybe 300 yards away actually. It's quite a distance. But that's only, I think, that's a 25 millimeter eyepiece, so it's probably 26 or 27 power, something like that. The focal length is a 640 millimeters, which is just a little bit more than 25 inches. So anyway, that's my neighbor's tree. You can actually see the video. I'm going to see it just for fun. I'm going to see if I can show you what it's like to focus the thing a little bit. I'm not tilting this very well. I'll show you what happens when it goes out of focus really badly. See how it'll blur out like that? Really bad. Even the camera's autofocus can't keep up with it. when you want to focus it, you just turn it until the image is sharp. Just as simple as that. You can see the image sharpening right up right before your eyes. It's vibrating a little bit because I'm just hand holding the camera. Also, I should mention that now the entire weight of the telescope right now, hold on, I'll just take that out of the way. Okay, now this whole telescope you can see right here. One of the reasons I wanted to use this on a tripod, this little lightweight camera tripod, this telescope you see right here, the entire weight of the entire telescope, from top to bottom, everything, including the eyepiece, the tripod, the telescope tube, everything, is approximately 7 pounds. I weighed the tripod. I got a little electronic weigh scale in my house, and the actual tripod weighs less than 2 pounds. So it's really quite a thing. And the telescope tube itself weighs approximately 5 pounds. So the weight of this whole thing is approximately 7 pounds. I'll show you how easy it is to pick it up. The weight with that Twilight Nano mount is a little over 11 pounds, maybe 11.5 pounds with a lightweight eyepiece in it. I'll show you how easy it is. I'm 70 years old now, and if I want a telescope that's easy to carry around, this is it. The image quality in this thing, by the way, at high power, I managed to get a good look at the planet Jupiter and Saturn with this thing at around, I think it was 107 power with a, I think it was a 6mm eyepiece, a 6mm expanse eyepiece. That's quite good, quite a good eyepiece. I don't think it's quite as good for planets as the TMB planetary eyepieces or the Orion planetary eyepieces, but pretty good. And anyway, I managed to look at Jupiter with this at 107 power, and the image was absolutely pure. There were no flares on the Jupiter's moons. The edge of Jupiter did not show any color fringing from chromatic aberration as far as I could tell. I could see the cloud bands very clearly, and I could start to see some of the details in the cloud bands. I thought I could even glimpse the disk shape of one of Jupiter's moons with this. That's how good this particular model is. By the way, I should mention to you that optical quality can vary quite a bit if you buy a different model, even from a telescope, even from the same company. So there goes a truck right along there delivering something. So anyway, I thought I'd mention to you that that's why I'm sort of emphasizing that this is the model of telescope that I bought specifically for that purpose. You could, I don't know whether this will focus on, you could even see the logo of the telescope right here. Explorer First Light. There it is right there. I think the camera will autofocus down to that. Pardon the slightly shaky video, that's because I'm hand holding the camera through the whole procedure. So as far as I could tell, this telescope is a little bit shakier on this mounting because it's such a lightweight one. As you can see, it vibrates a little bit, and on a windy night it might not work so well. Like it might vibrate all over the place on a windy night, but if the wind is not too strong, the thing should work just fine. And the telescope looks like it's strong enough. It's rated for the telescope, the tripod is rated as holding up to 5 pounds safely, and that's what the telescope tube weighs. It just, the tripod is not really designed to hold a telescope. But for my purposes, being 70 years old, if I want something that I can grab a hold of, walk out the door, and start looking through in a few seconds, this is the instrument of choice right here with it attached to that tripod. It seems to work quite well. I tried the motions of the telescope, and the motions of the telescope in this thing are amazingly smooth for such an inexpensive tripod. Like, I had no trouble at all adjusting the sideways motion and the altitude of the telescope in very small amounts. And then that means that I should be able to aim it fairly precisely, even with a high power eyepiece, which means you don't have a very wide field of view. So overall, it looks like it's going to work pretty well. What else was I thinking of? There's something else I thought I'd mention. Oh yeah, I was going to show you how easy it is for me to pick this up. Reaching over with my left hand. One of the reasons I want something easy to carry is I like to open my front door. I'll show you that briefly. Right there, it doesn't show very well, but the front aluminum door is up there. And I like to be able to walk up the steps right there at night in the dark and carry the telescope in one hand and open and close the door with the other hand. So I'm just carrying this in and out of the house with just one hand. So I'm going to show you how easy this is to pick up and put down. Okay, just got to, whoa, it's heavier. No, I'm just joking. But you can see I've got it bouncing around in one hand with my arm extended out. There's not much problem with it. It really works pretty well that way. I'll show you now. I'll see if I can unfurl this telescope to its greatest, the tripod, I mean, to its greatest extent. See, these legs tend to swivel out a bit more. There it comes. You can see that it's actually able to crunch out a little bit farther than it is. I think that's just about its maximum extent right now. You can see how sturdy the thing is, like when it's way out like that. Whoops. You kind of have to maneuver your feet when you're using the stool to look through the eyepiece, that little chair. You kind of have to maneuver the stool around and the telescope around so that your feet can kind of fit under the tripod legs without banging into them. So like, it's a little bit tricky to use with a chair, but looking through it sitting on a chair or a stool is a wonderful experience because it's extremely comfortable compared to standing up and look through a telescope. When you're standing up, your head tends to wave all over the place and you can't get a steady look through the telescope. But when you're sitting on a chair, your head you're able to hold your head almost perfectly still, and you can get a really good view through the eyepiece that way without a lot of shifting around going on, stuff like that. So anyway, there it is. I don't know whether I can add too much more than what I've said. Oh yeah, I guess I mentioned the baiter to it. All you have to do is like undo this thing. Take this. You have to take this tube out probably to put the short one in there. I guess I mentioned there's a short one, that little thread on there with a thing on it like that, and it makes the focal plane go up about 2 inches higher up there, and the baiter turret can be put in there, and it holds 4 eyepieces at once, all at the same time, as much as 4 eyepieces, which is a good idea to have very lightweight eyepieces that don't weigh very much. And I think that the TMB Planetary eyepiece, the 4mm, I weighed it on my electronic scale. It weighed 5.6 ounces. So this is a very lightweight eyepiece here. It hardly weighs anything. You could have an eyepiece like that in for low power, and then once you find the planet in the sky, or whatever you want, you just turn the turret like this, and another eyepiece pops right in instantly. You can even have it almost pre-focused where you want it, if you're careful. And then even then you just have to adjust this a little bit after you put the high power in. And then the low power eyepiece has a much wider angle field of view in the sky than the high power does. So you can use this as a device to help initially locate a star or a planet or the moon, and then once you get it in the low power, you sort of center it in that eyepiece, and then you switch around to the high power. You could also do it just by taking this out with this set screw and putting the high power right in there. You don't really need the baiter turret. Another thing I should mention is too that this is not an equatorial mount. As you're observing with this, the Earth is constantly rotating, and you'll see whatever you're looking at is actually traveling through the field of view, just going, usually from my perspective, from left to right. And you have to sort of move the telescope slightly ahead of where the object is going to be. And in an eyepiece like this, it'll take 3 or 4 minutes at that power for the star or planet to go right through the field of view. It's not actually moving all that fast. I've got a small equatorial mount and clock drive that'll work for various telescopes, and unfortunately it's nice mounting, and the clock drive is beautiful, but it weighs a lot. It's a real chore for me to get it in and out of that door when I'm tired at night and finishing off an observing session. And that's one reason why I'm going to these lightweight devices to hold things together. So tonight might be clear enough. I might actually get a chance to try that out. By the way, this is the first time right now that I've ever had this telescope tube on that tripod, just right now. So thought I'd mention that. So here it goes. I'm going to cut this video off before it gets too long. I'm going to do another video about my C5 in a minute.